Bulls Nation, from one optimistic player in Troy Brown Jr. to another one. Today we're going to be talking about a player that I don't believe many people believed would have had a genuine impact when being traded from his team to the Chicago Bulls. But in the end, through some chances given to him by Billy Donovan and of course his own talent and opportunity, he managed to get some very good consistent minutes for the Chicago Bulls. But in the end, is that optimism going to live up to anything? Today we're going to be talking about Javonte Green and what he could potentially be for the Chicago Bulls going forward, or whether or not he should definitely be brought back. Without further ado, let's talk about Javonte Green in this video. Let's do it. What's going on, everybody? It's the Aidan Sports Show, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be discussing a Chicago Bulls player that was traded from the Boston Celtics to the Chicago Bulls. And in the end, I don't think many people believed or had any high expectations for this player. But through some variety of minutes and consistent minutes for the Chicago Bulls, he managed to, I believe, shock a lot of people. And in the end, he managed to earn some minutes, and he managed to earn a lot of people's respect and potential praise, and what the future could lie from him in the upcoming season for the 2021-2022 season. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Aidan Sports Show YouTube channel, turn notifications on, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about Javonte Green. In the end, the Chicago Bulls did trade for this player. Of course, he wasn't the main player that we traded for in that trade in general, but again, he managed to shock a lot of people with his performances over the course of a few games for the Chicago Bulls. And of course, we are talking about Javonte Green here today. Again, there's a lot of discussions in terms of Javonte Green. He's another one of those players that is very intriguing on whether we should, what should we do? Should we end up maybe keeping him? Maybe there's a potential trade that we could potentially put him in a package deal for. Variety of reasons, variety of things that Javonte Green could be doing this season in terms of the Chicago Bulls. But I think it's safe to say that he's had a very underrated season, in my opinion. He's someone that I think that brought a lot to this team in the little amount of time that he played. He didn't really have a chance from the get-go, but when he got his chance, I think he took it and ran. And in the end, with the Chicago Bulls, I think there were a lot of people that didn't really get the game time that maybe many people thought that they deserved. And Javonte Green could be put in that category. But again, as I said before, once he got given his minutes, I think he did a very good job with it. So, Javonte Green's season averages is 3.6 points per game, 1.7 rebounds, 0.4 assists, shooting 52% from the field and 33% from the three-point line. Javonte Green, in the end, is someone that has not gotten a lot of game time throughout the course of his entire NBA career. This basically matches his career averages overall. And in the end, he's not someone that's had a lot of experience in the NBA. I think this is actually second year, I believe, in the NBA. And it makes a lot of sense why those stats are there, because he hasn't been given that much game time. But as I've said before for Javonte Green, when it comes to his stats, when it comes to his actual performances, I think they've been very underrated over the course of the year. So he got traded to the Chicago Bulls. Many people didn't see him as a player that's going to stay here for the long term. Many people probably didn't even want him to stay for the long term. But I bet you towards the end of the season, you started to see a lot more people want Javonte Green in here next season. And the reason why is his energy, his defensive awareness, and his athleticism has brought a major part to the Chicago Bulls in terms of their bench and in terms of, I guess, the actual style of basketball that we could play with him in the team. That's probably the biggest thing you could take out of Javonte Green. In the end, his stats are not amazing, and he's not someone that's going to produce a lot of points on a lot of given nights. But he is definitely someone that, in my opinion, can bring something to this team athleticism-wise and defensive-wise. And that's something I think the Chicago Bulls are in desperate need for. Again, we are one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. And Javonte Green kind of helps us with that situation, kind of makes us a slightly better defensive team, because he's a better defender than I think what a lot of our players are. And that's something you can never take away from a player like Javonte Green. But in the end, you look at Javonte Green and you look at the previous video that I talked about for Troy Brown Jr. And the question is, what's the difference between the two, and why should we end up believing this could be a long-term asset for the Chicago Bulls for Javonte Green? There's a lot of differences between the two, in my opinion, and of course I think many people can understand the big difference in the two. But for Javonte Green, it's as simple as, in terms of why this should be a long-term asset for us, He's cheap. He's very, very cheap. I believe he's only making $1 million next season, which again is pocket change for a team like the Chicago Bulls. For any team in the NBA, really, that's like a minimum contract at the end of the day. And that's something that he was given an opportunity for the Boston Celtics, something that's going to carry over to the Chicago Bulls. Next season, if we keep him on, he's only going to be making $1 million. So unless we literally need every single amount of money that we could possibly have, every single amount of dollars and cents that we possibly need to get everybody in this team, and we have to get rid of Javonte Green, then that's the only way I can see the Chicago Bulls really wanting to get rid of him, is to get another asset in. But for someone that's making $1 million and someone that can play defense on this team and can be called upon to be a reliable defender and someone that can come out on the fast break, get some easy layups, easy dunks, and he can shoot the three ball at a fairly okay rate, that's something that, again, I don't think the Chicago Bulls want to get rid of, especially next season. But I don't think this is a long-term investment for Javonte Green. And the reason why I don't think this is a long-term investment for Javonte Green is, again, he's only making $1 million. If he really impresses for the Chicago Bulls, he'll have to get paid more than that over the coming years. And we might not even have that kind of money going into 2 years, 3 years' time. We might be all capped out for the Chicago Bulls, which makes Javonte Green a difficult player to re-sign. But even if we do not give him more money, maybe if he accepts the same amount of money, and maybe if he does get more opportunities on the Bulls and he wants to stay here, the reason why I wouldn't consider him a long-term asset is because, one, although Javonte Green has done very well for the Chicago Bulls, and by far he's earned his minutes playing for the Chicago Bulls, I think he's been doing significantly better than some other players on the team, and he's earned more opportunities because of that. He's not a long-term prospect, in my opinion, because of his age. He's only 20. He's 27 years old. He's entering his prime in a way. He's only had 1 year of experience in the NBA. He could definitely get better. I'm not saying he can't get better. But in terms of a long-term asset for a 27-year-old, I think that's something that, in the end, that's going to be very unlikely. He reminds me of David Nwaba. David Nwaba was a player that we had under our belt that provided very similar things. He was very athletic for his size, pitbull mentality, defensive-minded, wanted to guard anybody and everybody, and he wouldn't stop until he made sure those players had bad nights. And that's what he was brought on the team to do. Javonte Green reminds me a lot of that situation when it comes to playing in the NBA, when it comes to playing for the Chicago Bulls. That's something that needs to be valued. That's something that, again, I think many people appreciate. But in terms of a long term, in terms of looking 4 years in advance, I just don't see Javonte Green on this team 4 years down the line. I see a player like Troy Brown Jr. 4 years down the line on this team potentially, because again, he's 21 years old. He's a player that has a lot of upside, and he's definitely a player that could be a two-way player. Javonte Green has that same similarity in terms of he wants to play defense, he wants to be an offensive threat at times, but the age is not on his side at the end of the day. And that's something that we cannot ignore if you want to talk about the Chicago Bulls' long-term future. And I do think there are better options out there to do that role than Javonte Green. But nevertheless, in terms of what I think about Javonte Green, I think next season, I would love to have Javonte Green back for the Chicago Bulls next season. In the end, none of our issues are going to get resolved overnight. So we need to make sure that we have players that can neglect the issues or kind of make our issues less meaningful. So, for example, defensively, we're one of the worst teams. Keeping Javonte Green for a year or two until those weaknesses end up being irrelevant is something that I don't mind doing. I'd love to see Javonte Green return to the Chicago Bulls next season, and I'd love to see him get a little bit more minutes. I'd love to see him play consistently, and I'd like to see if he can be more than just a defensive-minded player or an athletic type of player, because I think there's more to this guy that meets the eye. The question is, will we find out what he can be in terms of the Chicago Bulls and in terms of his NBA career in time before we can make that decision on him going into the future years? That's the question. That's the answer that in the end, he's going to have to prove to us, prove to the fans, prove to the board, the management, prove to the Chicago Bulls organization. And also, if he doesn't want to fall out of the league, he's going to have to prove that to a lot of teams in the NBA. And that's something we're going to have to wait and see if he's capable of doing. In the end, I like Javonte Green. I really do. In the end, I think we need a little bit more players in the league like Javonte Green defensively. But there needs to be a little bit more to that meets the eye for him. And hopefully we can see that down the line. And again, every player needs an opportunity to show what they have. And we need to see more opportunities come for a player like Javonte Green if he's going to stay here next season. But that's going to be the end of this video here. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. Again, He's definitely a player that I think many people have mixed opinions on in terms of the future. We're going to have to wait and see on the future. At the end of the day, no one can predict the future. Javonte Green's a very unpredictable player in my eyes in terms of his future on this team. But if he's going to be given a chance next season, give him that chance, give him the time, and let's see what we have on our hands here. No more wasted opportunities, no more opportunities given to players that don't deserve it. It's time to focus on the players that will give something to this team and give minutes to those players that deserve them. And Javonte Green might not deserve 30 minutes per game, but he deserves a little bit more game time than what he got throughout the season, and I think he's earned that. So let's see what happens. Have a wonderful and safe day. Take care, and peace.